NHL 25 is on the horizon, and I thought that it would be good to be held accountable. So in an effort to do that, I thought, why not go back to the breakdown I did of the HUD deep dive and see all of the questions I had, all of the things I was excited about, and how they played out through the year, and have a little bit of fun with it. Now, forewarning, this is going to be a pretty long video because somehow I turned the deep dive that I actually made for EA into an 18-minute video, and obviously reviewing an 18-minute video is going to mean that it's longer than that, so I do apologize. There is a lot of yapping that I normally do, but let's do an NHL 24 HUT retrospective and see how things played out. Full disclosure, I have not watched this going into this, so I could look like an absolute idiot, and hey, that's how we grow. That's how we grow as human beings, all right? So here we go. I also hate listening to myself, so this is going to be an exercise in personal growth. Here we go. We finally got it, the Hockey Ultimate Team Deep Dive for NHL 24. It's time to break it down, and I guess this is one of the more weirder breakdowns that you'll see, considering I made the video. So, let's talk about it. Let's get things. This is a review of my review of the video I made. So, with the biggest addition coming to NHL 24, with the all-new HUT Moments. This year, you'll be able to play through some of the most historic moments in hockey history. One of the more fun things about a creator doing this video is that I got to choose exactly what content went in it and what was shown. So I tried to show as much as I possibly could so you guys could have as much information as possible. Hey, that was a nice thing. Okay, I'm not upset about that. So right here, this is the list of X Factor moments that will be in the game at launch. All of these cards on the left-hand side, confirmed X Factors. I'll talk about it more later in the video, but every single team in NHL 24 will have one X Factor, and each of them have their own corresponding moment at launch of the game, as well as complete moments that happen during this upcoming season. Now, HUT Moments will be replacing the offline HUT challenges from past games. In HUT challenges, you were limited to a vague set of objectives to complete against a set roster in the game. In HUT Moments, you will be dropped into a specific time and scenario with customized best X Factor card art that we've gotten easily. Players and rosters. Yeah, all right, that checks out. I know I saw a comment how, like, oh, it doesn't matter how bad or good the event is, Sleeves is always going to go nuts over the card art. I still stand by that. I think the X Factor card art is pretty good to fit that exact moment in hockey. And some will include a detailed breakdown from James Cebulski to hype up that moment.
In the opening round of the 2021 playoffs, the Montreal Canadiens found themselves on the brink of a...
It's funny because we haven't done these moments since launch of the game, and I forgot, like, how good these ones were with, like, the hype piece that went behind it. Ugh.
Elimination, trailing 3-1 to their arch rivals, the Toronto Maple Leafs. It was Nick Suzuki who ignited the spark in Game 5 with an electrifying overtime goal, propelling the Habs to not only force a Game 6, but to also claim the series in 7. This is your moment. Triumph over the Leafs in overtime and orchestrate a remarkable series comeback.
Look, I could have chosen any moment to go here, but I figured this one would piss the most amount of people off, I'll be honest. Now on top... Yeah, all right, that was clever. Top of the large list representing the more recent events in hockey, there will also be some of the most memorable in the history of the sport. Mario's emotional return in December of 2000 against the Leafs, all the way to Gretzky's 5-goal game against the Flyers in 1981, giving him 50 goals in 39 games. On top of all that, some moments will actually have you player locked to a specific player to complete that moment. And yes, that includes goaltenders. One of the most requested quality of life improvements from the community has been ending a moment when you've completed all. All right, quick on live moments. This is 2 minutes into the video, roughly, of the deep dive, and it's all been just about live moments. And they became such a small part of the game. They were essentially just a throw-in, and I hope I talk about that later on. But it just goes to show that HUT did not get a lot of love at all. And I remember when I was doing this deep dive that I was concerned, like, this is pretty empty. The objectives. So I had to ask Nicholas, what happens when you complete all of the objectives in a HUT moment?
We actually gave you the option to end the moment early this year. I know it's something that was kind of called out as a quality of life thing in the past. So now, very simply, the next face-off in the game, you'll get prompted. You can exit and claim rewards early. If you're having fun playing the match and just want to play it all the way through, you can just hit continue and still quit out and get your rewards early anytime.
Let's talk about HUT moments. If you didn't play in the community playtest, this is your first look at HUT moment. It is the perfect recreation of what offline HUT challenges should have been, and I'm it's really excited it's brought back from NHL 15. Offline HUT challenges have been in the game since NHL 17, and they were a complete joke. They were forgotten about, and they... So far, I'm pretty bang on here, I feel. We're there just to say they were there for offline players. The rewards were pitiful, the objectives made no sense, and half the time they didn't work, and the rosters were whatever team's rosters they were. HUT moments have specific roster tied to that moment. Some of them have you player locked, even as a goaltender, which is sick. And a few of them are really challenging. Here are my fears for HUT moments. I can confirm that during the first event of the year, that each of the Master Set players that will come out for that event will get a HUT moment, as they should. It is the big marketed mode in Hockey Ultimate Team, and every event has a few cards that are hyper-focused on. Those players are the ones they want to represent that event. They need to have a moment. And my fear is that as the year goes along, they're not going to keep up with that. So hopefully, the live content team will continue to make... From my recollection, they've been pretty good about making moments for the Master Set player items. So that was like that was a check. That was a positive in that aspect when talking about live moments. So I'll give them credit on that. Make moments for every single Master Set player that comes out. Next, the rewards. If they stay the same as offline challenges, like 500 coins for every star that you complete, or maybe, you know, a few PowerUp collectibles or X Factor cards by completing the whole list, that's going to be a major letdown. Here is what I pray that we see. You're going to see throughout this video that it does look like cards are going to be much more lower rated at launch of the game to, again, help progression not escalate so fast in HUT. What needs to happen, in my opinion, is that every time that there is an event, there is a moment tied to every single Master Set player. At the bare minimum, when you complete that moment for each of those players, you get the lowest tier rating of that Master Set player. If we don't get that, that is a massive miss, and I really won't understand any justification for it. So, I've got some massive pessimism about that, but we'll have to wait and see when the game actually launches how that's going to work. All right, I was pretty bang on there. We didn't get that. You know, we did get some decent rewards. Like, if you go back and look at live moments, I feel like they were boring because offline hockey is just not nearly as fun to the majority of the player. Offline in this context, because what it ended up being was a lot of these moments, the objective didn't track, the objective didn't really make much sense, and outside of those first initial ones at launch that were so well thought out, a part of me thinks that the reason why those launch objectives were so good was because they had like a month to put them together. I remember talking to Nicholas when I was in Vancouver interviewing him for this video, that he had mentioned that he was pretty proud that he went back and he was looking at like players on the team and their line mates and putting together these moments, and he was pretty proud about that initial list. I remember them being very challenging, the X Factor list and especially the Ultimate Icon ones. I remember the first couple weeks trying to do those ultimate icon ones, like on Superstar, man, were they difficult. And I think that's something that for quite a few of the player base, that once you get half decent at the game, offline becomes so easy. Like squad battles is score 5 goals, get 20 shots. And for a lot of the hardcore players, you can do that in your sleep. I know a lot of players can't, but it makes the mode very easy if a large portion of the player base has a very easy time doing it. Just as humans, if you don't get challenged, you lose like the excitement of the reward, right? And then I agree with what I said here. I don't get why live moments was the most promoted thing this year in HUT, and we didn't just get the base card of that moment, like completing the objective for the headline Adam Fox, and then not just getting that Adam Fox card at the lowest level. Instead, we get like a pack, like a premium pack or something, and not the actual card. That was a big miss, and I still don't understand why they can't just give out that lowest rated card, even as the year goes along. I think it would just add a lot more to live moments, for sure. Next issue I have. There's no denying that if you were to make a perfect version of offline HUT challenges, you would get HUT moments. The issue is that if you were to rank the 5 ways to play Hockey Ultimate Team, it would go Rivals, Squad Battles, HUT Champs, HUT Rush, and then offline challenges. Meaning that they picked the 5th most engaged mode to recreate first. And again, there's no denying that they made offline challenges perfect, but there's also no denying that it is legitimately like the 5th most played mode. Myself personally, I would have loved to see Rivals or Squad Battles get fixed first, simply because if you're an offline player, your main mode is Squad Battles for rewards, And if you're an online player, you're probably not playing HUP Moments. Give us the Master Set players for each moment of the future events upcoming. And for anyone that has not played Hockey Ultimate Team in the past year or so, it's not very expensive to get the lowest tiered Master Set player. It's the least they could do. And it makes sense, like you're playing that moment for that player. And they make sure they update moments regularly. I'm talking every event throughout the year. Okay, well done. All right, I completely agree. I still stand by that, and I kind of had a fear when I saw that HUP Moments was the main thing, and I think that played out. The fact that we still have the same cycle of rivals, squad battles, champs, repeat, and then Hut Rush was thrown in. Hut Rush was so confusing because they made it the most rewarding mode for like the first 2 months of the game, but they didn't improve the mode at all, and it was so busted that it just did not make any sense. It was like, oh, we have this mode that offers like a track of rewards that is like a nice way to give out rewards, but the way that the mode is played is so busted because it didn't receive any love technically, and it's just a terrible experience. Like, remember trying to get wrist shots in Hut Rush? Like, it was just so stupid. And Live Moments was, again, like the least played mode, so them focusing on that instead of Rivals, which has been the exact same since we've gotten it, big miss, and I'm glad that I pointed that out there. So far, I'm pretty bang on. I'm pretty happy. I hope that I keep it up. Speaking of completing objectives, that leads us into our next feature for NHL 24, Objectives 2.0. In this year's game, objectives will be tracked in real time and can now include in-game actions such as goals, assists, shot types, hits, as well as dekes. This is a massive upgrade from NHL 23, in which objectives were limited to games played with a specific card type, such as a current event, or simply totaling a certain stat, like score 50 goals, regardless of the player used to do so. In NHL 24, the objectives can be tracked with specific cards. For example, if a new event comes out, instead of just games played with event cards, it will be score goals, get assists. I showed the Zegras moment, and it's a long time ago, but I'm almost positive this event was broken at launch, and when you did a Zegras goal, or when you did a lacrosse goal, it didn't count in this moment, and they had to make it like something else. And some will even have you doing so with specific cards. Now, to keep track of these objectives, you'll receive an in-game pop-up while you work towards the objectives. Now, I asked Nicholas what that means from a developer standpoint, and I'm actually pretty happy with how I edited this. Guys, I know I've been doing YouTube for a long time. I'm not a great editor, so I remember being so stressed out making this deep dive, and it was actually pretty well put together, I think. What he's most excited for when it comes to Objectives 2.0.
We're utilizing this new tech to actually refresh our daily and weekly objectives. So we want to, give a different look to that stuff and just give some new fun things to do, every day and every week. And then on top of that, the thing that I'm most excited about is, we're able to build Objectives 2.0 around doing things with specific player cards, specific players, specific teams, or card types, and all that's going to allow, event objectives to have a lot more depth and be a lot more meaningful.
Objectives 2.0, low-key one of the best additions to Hockey Ultimate Team that we've gotten maybe ever. I have no complaints with it. In this example right here on the screen, if you pre-order the game and you get the 85 overall Cale Makar training camp card, you can see just some of the examples of how Objectives 2.0 will work, where it's going to track you doing specific things with specific cards. Why that's huge is because it isn't just the monotonous get an event card and play games. That was what Objectives 1.0 was. Anytime that you've got to do specific things with certain cards adds way more engagement to the actual mode. The only improvement that they could make to this is if you completed these objectives that you upgraded the card, like the parallel system in MLB. So if you completed all these Cale Makar objectives by doing specific things in game with them, that, his overall went up. So, while I was a little critical of HUP Moments, Objectives 2.0 is a massive win. Okay. All right. Hand up, that's a big L, because that's not how that played out at all. When you go back and look, my thought, I'm assuming here, was that you would get a card and you'd be more engaged to do stuff in-game with that card, but what ended up happening was, instead of it just games played with cards in your lineup, you just had to score goals with those cards in squad battles on Rookie 1,000 times. And I believe for, the first, month and a half of the game, they didn't even use these. It was a lot of just get games, because I remember complaining in the game changer. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misremembering this about why are Objectives 2.0 not being used. But this was a huge miss by me. I think I was thinking that it's going to be something different than it was. This ended up it ended up just being more monotony. So instead of just load your lineup with certain event cards to get the games done, it was like get a few event cards, do the same move over and over and over and over and over again, and then move on. So it was a different vehicle to get to the same boring result. So massive miss by me on this one. I take the L on that. It was not what I thought it would be. I think what the perfect way with this should be is, one, it should be recorded. Like, you should see this stuff, like the deeks and things like that, done with each card. So maybe it shows you in like the card stats, you could see them all. But I think the only way that this actually works as the way that I thought it would be is if, let's say you have an upgradable card and that you do X amount of these objectives and the card itself upgrades automatically without you having to pay anything. I think that's what I'm thinking here, but I was way off on this. So, yep, score 1 for you guys. I was super wrong. Engagement to the actual mode. The only improvement, far all went up. So, well, win. To complete those objectives, it's going to be far easier because in NHL 20... God, I need a new haircut. Good lord. 4, we are getting a shared economy. In this year's game, you will be able to buy, sell, and trade with players from the opposite console, meaning that PlayStation 5 and Xbox... I remember being like, I've got to include... This was, like, leaked, like, a month before the game, like, the deep dive was announced. It was, like, a little nugget, and I'm like... God, I was really scrounging stuff together for what was new in Hut last year. Holy smokes. Series S and X players, they will now share a single market. PlayStation 4 and Xbox One players, they will also share a single market. Not much else to say here. This was announced by EA a few weeks ago. Cross-market is one of the biggest quality of life improvements that everyone in the NHL community has been asking for, essentially doubling all of the cards on the market. And because cards are currency, this is going to lead to a far better gaming experience inside of Hut. So it being... yeah, I think that was correct. I think the only way to improve it now is to get rid of old gen. I apologize for people that still play on old gen. I'm been pretty adamant about this, that I think that the lack of jump to the current gen console has been one of the biggest hindrances in gaming potentially ever since the early 90s. I think COVID really impacted this, and they just haven't gotten rid of old gen games and developing on them, so they can't focus on the new stuff. So I doubt EA NHL gets rid of old gen next year because they probably need the base game sales still. NCAA went full new gen, and we saw one of the biggest improvements in games and sports games that we've ever seen. And, you know, I hope that EA eventually just gets rid. I have a feeling that we're going to get PS6, and that's when they're going to stop making PS4. Easier to acquire the cards you're looking for in NHL 24, you'll be able to show them off with the all-new Hut Share. This will allow you to share your roster through a single screenshot. It includes both desktop and mobile view designed for easy sharing of your progress. It'll highlight your entire roster, as well as some of the biggest accomplishments you've made during your time in Hockey Ultimate Team. Another cool feature, I think some people will take advantage of it. This is really going to help for anyone that wants to, you know, ask me team builder questions, things like that. You'll no longer have to use third-party team building websites to go out and build your team to do so. Shameless plug. Hut Hub, the site that I help build on League Gaming, is coming back in full force, and we'll have every single card at launch of the game. Link is down below to Hut Hub, and you're going to see a ton of massive improvements to the site again at launch. However, again, as a person who plays this game and a creator, I try to throw as many cards as I possibly could in here to kind of give you some hints at some of the other cards that are coming. So real quick, Jeremy Roenick didn't even, in the build that I had, if for anyone that doesn't know, like Hut content is like the last thing that goes into the game because that can be a day 0 update, right? So in this build, Jeremy Roenick's team builder didn't even have the master set card art. Bunch of team builders, so you'll see like Mike Green, Marian Hossa, Dale Howardchuk, but the 87 Roenick, you're going to see him featured in a little bit. That's one of the new team builders when you collect all of, you know, the individual team builder cards. That's one of the cards that you can trade in for. We've also got some new icon art, and how icons are going to work is drastically different. Again, later in the video. See Stevie Yzerman as well as Boreas Salming. And Tomas Hertl, my boy, confirmed the Sharks representative as an X Factor. We're also getting the brand new XP sets. In this year's game, you'll earn XP from logins. I'm scared about what I'm going to say here. Daily and weekly objectives for use in a new linear set track. By completing all 40 sets released weekly, you can earn yourself an all 99 overall master item. To speak more about the new XP sets, I asked Nicholas about how it's going to work.
Yeah, so we wanted to look at a way of revamping the monthly collectible sets, and so This year, we're actually going to have a more linear track. But the real goal of it, the real exciting part about it is you're actually pursuing this, what we kind of call the ultimate hut reward. And it's going to be a 99 everything card that you'll get just from completing these sets throughout the year. And so you get XP collectibles from daily and weekly challenges, etc. And then as you do these sets, you'll earn individual collectibles that work toward this ultimate reward. I think I was mentioning, like, we really want these to represent or be representative of, you know, what happened this year, big stories from that year, and so that they actually have meaning in the context of the 23-24 season. So right now I can only reveal 2 that have been chosen, which are Cale Makar, who's our cover athlete this year, and Connor Bedard, first overall pick from the...
All right, XP sets are essentially replacing seasonal collectibles and the seasonal reward path, and it does it in a very effective way. So let's say you pick the game up in January. All the sets that have already come out at the launch of the game, you can go back and get XP sets by logging in, doing objectives, all of that. You can get a ton and actually catch up, which is huge because at the end of the game, you get rewarded with a 99 overall. Again, much like Hut Moments though, my issue is if you were to line up all of the live content and what you would want to improve, seasonal collectibles is like the last thing on the list. So again, while XP sets is a fantastic way to fix seasonal collectibles, it's just like the least important one. And again, just to be clear, while you're going throughout the season and you're filling in the sets as you go, you get packs and stuff like that along the way. It's not just like you just have to cash them in and then eventually when you get to the final tier, you get Cale Makar or whatever the other 99s are. You are getting packs along the way as well. So again, just wanted to reiterate that. Also, okay. This is like, so again, this video is about being held accountable, having a fun look to go back and see how right or wrong and our thoughts about NHL 24 at launch with NHL 25 on the horizon. I remember specifically that I left EA with the thought thinking that XP sets were going to operate way different than what they ended up doing. And I remember it was like my first, also I want to talk, before I forget, Nicholas no longer works with EA NHL. And he wasn't the live content developer. He was in prior years, and I think he did a great job. I honestly, it was really sad to hear that he moved on to a different department or a different area, but he's no longer with EA NHL from my understanding. And I remember I got into kind of a battle because when it first came out when the first few XP sets were dropped, where we had to pay things, I did not leave EA and make this video, like and go through the Hut early on stages, knowing that you had to pay stuff every week for the reward. I thought it was just get XP sets and then you get different packs like along the way. The fact that we had to pay stuff on top of the XP collectibles makes no sense to me. I understand there's an economy that they have, and they don't want to just give out free things because then everyone has so much in abundance, and it, I don't know, maybe drops pack sales or makes everyone's cards too overpowered. I don't know what it is. But I remember getting into a heated battle about that. I was the one that created the narrative that they were supposed to be free, because I remember in my first few videos that XP sets were going to be fantastic because you just get free stuff every week. And I remember I made a tweet about it being like, I don't understand why we're paying so much, because I don't remember the first most expensive one was. I'm sure people in the comments remember, but I think it was like in November, early November or maybe late November, where we had to pay something that was pretty significant in cost. I don't know if it was logos or what it was. I remember being pretty upset about it because that's not what we were promised. However, they said that it was me that said that, and I went back and I remember looking at like all the stuff, and I'm like, man, there was a major miscommunication because I was not aware that that's how it was going to go. So something that I learned from that whole engagement is I'm going to ask 3 or 4 times when new stuff comes out, because I want to be absolutely 100% sure that I know what I'm talking about beforehand, because in this instance, I would have had a completely different outlook on XP sets, because I think that they were fine, but the paying extra stuff is ridiculous, because seasonal collectibles, if you remember back, what they replaced, we didn't have to pay anything. We just had to pay the collectibles, and we got stuff, and it was whatever we wanted, right? It wasn't as fun, but XP sets replacing that didn't give us anything great. We got a 99 at the end of the year. The other thing, Nicholas's vision, I think, for the XP sets did not come to fruition, because I remember him being really excited about how they get to highlight the biggest storylines from that season of hockey. What ended up happening was it was them highlighting people that did not get a either Team of the Year or Team of the Season card, in my opinion. Like, Makar and Bedard made sense because first overall pick, regardless of what happened in the season, Makar is the cover athlete, makes sense. I'll be honest with you, when you think of, like, storylines, like, Matt Rempe should have gotten one because he took over the, and I understand that he didn't have a great offensive performance and things like that, but I was in New York. I was at the outdoor game when, like, he literally was the talk of the NHL for 3 months, right? And maybe they don't think that that's what should be highlighted, but, I mean, clearly they do because they give him out a number of cards since then. It's just I didn't really understand why Draisaitl and Crosby got one over, like, McDavid or McKinnon or Kucherov or Panarin. Like, that really didn't make sense to me. It just felt like, oh, we need to give out cards that people don't already have Team of the Year card versions of. And I think that wasn't Nicholas's vision, and it just kind of fell flat. Like, it did not hit the way that I think it was intended to hit. Getting a change in NHL 24 will be synergies. There are going to be a base set of synergies for each player type in the game. For example, power forwards will have the powered forward synergy, which will allow player types to more reflect their playstyle in game. On top of that, there'll be new boost synergies, which will be added to player items through live content.
The first thing we wanted to do was bring more meaning to the player types in the game. So right now they're kind of represented as, 3 letters on a card, two-way forward, power forward, etc. And this year we're actually going to have a power forward synergy that goes on every power forward item. It helps you understand when you're building a team that you're building around a certain identity. And on top of that, there will be another number of synergies that are purely just boosts, and they're named a little bit more simply. Like, there's an acceleration boost, a speed boost, etc. And we wanted to make that, the synergies a little bit more approachable for players and a little bit more understandable.
All right, so we're inching towards a build system with this synergy setup. I think this is a great way to spice up synergies. It makes it so that they can have cards or players like power forwards, Matthew Tkachuk, his synergies more are in line with that player type, which again, I think is kind of cool and it makes sense. As you go along with cards that have unlockable synergy slots, you will unlock boosts to skating or shooting and things like that. And again, it just kind of makes sense and it works towards a build system. And last, I don't disagree with what I said there, but get rid of synergies. I'm at the point now where I'd rather see chemistry come back in a way where we can get, like, I would love to be able to use a base card team of one specific team. So let's say you wanted to be you're a Sharks fan. You want to use the Sharks online. You would never be able to do that if you are a decent player, because once you get up into Division 2 or even 3, you're going up against opponents that at least know how to play the game somewhat. And if you have such a significant team disadvantage, it just ruins, it really hurts the ability to use your favorite cards. And I think that EA NHL struggles so much from, these are the cards you have to use to have a decent time online if you're good. I think that it's funny, the worse that you are at the game, the better your experience can be from a team building standpoint, because it really doesn't matter. And at the higher end, it's the complete opposite. You have to have the biggest, fastest cards in the game or with the best abilities, or you're going to have a really hard time. So I would love to see, if you have 12 Sharks in your lineup, they get like a +3 overall boost. Something along those lines to at least make them usable. Synergies made sense, because if we didn't have them, there would literally be nothing different between each of the cards. And I honestly think the same thing goes for X Factors. Because we don't have custom shots or custom skating strides in NHL, there is nothing that differentiates cards. And I know a lot of people that don't realize that every single card is literally just a blank attribute with a name on top. They don't feel any different. There are a few, but it's very, very few and far between, because they don't have custom shooting and custom strides. And once that becomes a thing, once that tech becomes available, that'll completely change the way, especially HUT works. But I think we need X Factors in game, because we need a reason for the cards to feel somewhat different. And synergies are the kind of the same, but they've been around for so long. And I think we get into this thing where it's like, oh, if they don't have X synergy, it's like, then they're not really usable. I would love if they just got rid of synergies and gave chemistry boosts. And I talked about this a little bit in my Fixing HUT video, but it doesn't just have to be cards that are on the same team like it was before, because you had like those change team things so they fit your chemistry. It could be like players from the 2000s, players from the 2010s, alumni. It could be anything like that, and I think that would go a long way. Much like if you play MLB, the captain boosts work, how they work. Lastly, let's discuss the content coming up in NHL 24. X Factors will be coming back to NHL 24. X Factor Choice Packs, back to being 1 of 5. I'm pretty sure they didn't. Like, weren't they 1 of 3? And for whatever reason they were, I don't know what happened here. In this year's game, there will be a representative from every single NHL franchise, totaling 32 players across the league. On top of that, there will be 6 women X Factor cards from their corresponding internationals. Want to touch on X Factors real quick? Again, I think the change from just like the top players in the game getting an X Factor card as opposed to the 1 of 32 is an actual good change. I can give you the representation of someone who follows a team that is absolutely brutal in the San Jose Sharks. Them not having an X Factor really sucks from like a team building standpoint because I want to have an X Factor of the Sharks. I don't care who it is. Hurdle's a great one, by the way. Obviously, the downfall to this is like the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's Mitch Marner, not Matthews. However, we've come to realize that X Factor cards are really brutal value and they should just be used for team building aspects. So, like I said, I actually like this change. But they don't have customizable abilities again, so team builder. Okay, I think X Factors had more of an impact than what I thought they would because I said that they'd only be good for team building aspects, but because the content team made it where, like, they gave fantasy cards to players that had X Factors, like Doughty, for example, or Nick Suzuki, that was unexpected and made X Factors super relevant. But then you also had X Factors that are, like, forgotten about, and that was really rough, too. Like, I don't know why that was a thing. And, they need customizable abilities. Like, if we're going to keep doing X Factors, what I meant by that was if a live moments card comes out for Tomas Hertl and he has, I don't know, close quarters as his gold ability, if you have his X Factor, and I think it was Big Rig as his gold ability, you need to be able to select that gold ability since he unlocked it with his live moments card, getting it, being able to choose close quarters. That's what would take X Factors to the next level and really give them a lot of value. Also, I understand why every team got 1. Give every player that deserves 1 on top of every team getting at least 1. I think that it's important to have every team having 1, I do. But the fact that we had Draisaitl and McDavid, not have 1, and, you've got Marner and Matthews and Nylander, like, I think that needs to be addressed too. Like, give every card an X Factor, who cares? Will also be making a return to NHL 24 with some major changes in how you acquire the team builder cards. As you go through and collect cards from each individual squad, you will get that team's 84 overall team builder card. Marian Hossa is the Blackhawks team builder, so if you get all of the Blackhawks, you'll get Marian Hossa. Kinda slaps for launch of the... Yeah, it's actually not a bad card for launching. I was right on that. Game. Potential early banger. Once you have again, I'm so stupid. Try to throw as many team builders into the video that you can see. Patrice Brisebois from the Montreal Canadiens. Actually a low-key fun selection for the 87 overall. Was one of the best cards of the game. If you played at launch, Patrice Brisebois' card was the best defenseman for like the first month of the game. 6 total 84 overall team builder cards. Again, because of the lower overalls at launch of the game, the cost to get the first set of team builders is reduced. It only costs 6 instead of 8, and 87s are still among the best cards at launch of the game. You could then trade them in for an 87. However, the big change coming to NHL 24 is that it can be any of the 32 team builder cards, meaning that you won't need to collect every single division and every single team if you wanted the new 87 overall Jeremy Roenick. I get points for the Jack Johnson meme. Come on. You could go ahead and cash in 6 Jack Johnson cards to acquire him. All right, freeze frame on what the 87 overall team builder Jeremy Roenick will look like. Again, I kind of like the synergy change in how it works now. With the shooting boost, all of his shooting stats get jacked up, which is nice. So I think that's like low-key a nice change. Taking the return to NHL... Like I said, I think that it's not as important anymore, but it was a nice change year over year. NHL 24 are the PowerUp Icons set. Now, the big change to the PowerUp Icons this year will be the fact that they are broken down into 4 separate categories. You've got Playoff Heroes, Rookie Cards, Vintage, as well as Dynamic Duo. Now, once you are able to collect the 2 headliner items from each of those 4 sets, you can then trade them in for the ultimate PowerUp Icon. In this year's game, they will be Mario Lemieux, Wayne Gretzky, and Gordie Howe. And they will continue to upgrade throughout the Icons are one of the bigger changes, and again, I'd love to hear your feedback on it. I think because there are so many Master Set players that they wanted to simplify the list and update the card art for it. But essentially, there's 8 power-up icons for each of the subsections. So playoff heroes, rookies, dynamic duos, and vintage. So there are a lot less, but how you get Gretzky, Mario, and Gordie Howe is significantly improved from last year because they removed that final gambling aspect at the very end with the most expensive set of cards. Dude, that was brutal that you had to get a year. So from Hut Moments to Objectives 2.0, the new XP sets and updated live content, there is a lot to do in this year's game. So overall, I'm glad Okay, all right. I'm curious to what I say here because looking back, that's such a weak list. You know, like, God, Hut needs its love. Like, I get that, like, the meme is like, they only care about Hut, they don't care about any other mode. It's like, that's a lie. We have the same stuff. Like, that list that we just got was all the new stuff, and that was, like, nothing. All right, let's hope I bring it home here with some actual good takes. Gameplay is going to be way different. Unfortunately, it does look like Hut received some pretty good quality of life improvements, but there's still no major shakeup to the mode. There's no way to look around it. The same cycle of rivals, champs, squad battles, repeat looks to be in effect. Maybe they'll come out with something and surprise all of us. I do think Hut Moments is a great addition from offline challenges, and Objectives 2.0 is fantastic, but the live content team is going to have to carry the load significantly this year and have it far improved from NHL 23. That did not happen at all. Okay, so at least my takes at the end, other than Objectives 2.0, pretty bang on when it came to my concerns for NHL 24. But man, the content was so much worse than 23 until like the last 2 months of the game. Like, oh man. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. And if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do for the most. Hey, make sure you subscribe. So in all, going into NHL 25, now that we've got some accountability, I'm going to be much more cautious. And like I mentioned about the XP sets, when it comes to this year's game, I'm going to ask the same question like 5 times to make sure that I get the right answer on all of the new stuff. Because, yeah, like I didn't understand that when it came to XP sets, so it's something I'm definitely going to have to pay attention for. But we're going to get news on NHL, not just Hockey Ultimate Team, but NHL in general, very shortly. Everyone's asking how was it August, well, this is 11th at the time of this recording. We haven't heard anything. We didn't get anything until August 14th of last year. So my guess would be it's this week or the following week at the latest that we'll at least get the cover athlete. My guess would be Bedard or Kachuk. I'd be stunned if it's anyone else. And then we'll start getting into that news cycle where we start seeing things. I think I'm going to do this with gameplay as well. I'm so curious to see what I said about gameplay going into NHL 24. But this was a fun little experiment. Very long video. I do apologize. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below and what your thoughts were and maybe what you liked about my content throughout the year and things that you want to see me do differently. Again, I'm nothing if I'm not accountable for mistakes and things that I do here. So I appreciate you guys watching, and make sure you subscribe and follow for NHL 25 news and info. I'll have it first. See you guys next time.